To you. Thank you, my brother Brahma. Maharishi Swami Dayanand Saraswati. The man, the leader. Yam Vaidika Mantra Drusha Purana Indram Yamam Matarishwanamahu Vedantino Nirvachaniyamekam Yam Brahma Shaktena Vinirdishanti Shaivayamisham Shiva Ityavochan Yam Vishnuva Vishnuritishthuvanti Buddhastatharhan Niti Bodhajena Sat Shriya Kaleti Chat Sikha Santaha Shashte Kite Kit Katichit Kumara Swami Timate Tipite Bhaktya Yam Partiyante Jagadishitaram Sa Eka Eva Prabhuratvidya. Even though these are called mantras, they are not from the Vedas. I like them because they expound the greatness of Mother India, which gave us that great Rishi. The land from where the Vedas came, where the Vedas, the mantras of the Vedas were revealed. The land of the Puranas, the stories of ancient times and the great scriptures. The land of Indra, Yama, Matarishva, he who was present everywhere like air. The land of the Vedantins, those who follow the philosophy of Vedanta, they breathe the word Brahma, this Mother India. The land of Shiva, Vishnu, Buddha, and Himsa. The land of the Jains, the Sikhs, who refer to Sat Shri Akal, the timeless truth. This Mother India, the great land. We pay homage, Vande Mataram, we bow to thee, O Mother India, who gave us these great minds who seek to make this universe, this world of ours, noble. My dear brothers, sisters, children of one God, Namaste. My fellow souls, today we talk about something that's a little bit different, or someone who is a lot different. Let's talk about this person because of whom we are all sitting in here in Mandir, in this beautiful Mandir, because of whom this Mandir exists and many others like this exist. We're celebrating 200 years since the day the greatest society-changing, most influential of all leaders were given to mankind in the form of our own Maharishi Swami Dayanand Saraswati. This brilliant light, who even in his passing will never be extinguished. This brilliant light that came into being on February 12th, 1824. In every Arya Samaj Mandir we hear speeches about Swamiji. We hear talks about his life and his greatness and the stories of his life. The Maharishi, the man, the leader, the visionary, and today for each one of us, I believe he is also a measurement of our own mental growth, our spiritual growth, and our simple moral growth as human beings. This Maharishi we know as Swami Dayananda Saraswati, the epitome of Aryanness itself. This amazing man who lived his life for what he believed. He defended what he believed. And he died, yes, he gave his life for what he believed. There was no one like him before. There is no one else like him now. So we hear the story of Swamiji every Monday you go to, you hear the songs and you hear the stories and all of that. But you see, there's a huge mistake which is constantly being made. It is a great story of his life. It is a great story to be told. The mistake is that it is not just a story to be told. It is a story to be lived. His life is one which should be emulated by each one of us. He was a man of principles. What kind of principles? Vedic principles. Those very same principles by which he laid out the 10 principles of the Arya Samaj. I will not read these out to you today. It is the same principles which we should be living each and every single day, not just talk about. It is the same principles which we should be walking the talk every single Sunday, not just read them to each other. The man who lived his life as a living, breathing example to each one of us. And individually, we must ask ourselves the question, are we measuring up? Are we measuring up? Are we walking the talk? Are we living a life of example? Each one of us, are we living a life of example? What example? Again, are we following the 10 principles that were laid out by this great sage? Or are we simply reading them over and over and over? He specifically stated he did not want to be revered. He did not want to be called a guru. He did not want to be put on a pedestal. He did not want statues made of him. He did not want his praises sung. But I will not tell you what is done. You know what's being done. But the thing is that some of us continue to do the things he did not want us to do. I know some people say, Pandit Jag, you hardly talk about Swami Dayanand. I tell you what, in my mind, showing that I can live by the 10 principles is what's more important for me. I believe that anyone, executives and all pundits, should measure ourselves by the 10 principles. Are we living by each one of those principles? What did he want? What is the one thing he asked us to do? He laid out one challenge. This one overwhelming, arduous task in a few simple words. Krinvando Vishwam Aryam. He asked us to make this universe, this world noble. How? By first making ourselves noble. And then showing others how to do it. But what most of us do, we go and we preach to others of being noble and how to become noble, but we do not focus on making ourselves noble. We read mantras and we tell all others how to solve their problems, but we do not focus on the problems and the things we're doing that's not right. Now think about that question for a moment and ask yourself and answer silently to yourself. Am I a noble person? Reflect on that question for 10 seconds. Am I a noble person? Are you following the 10 principles of Arya Samaj? First, let me remind you what Sri Krishna told Arjuna about the destruction of sacred values. Kulakshaye pranashyanti kula dharma sanatana dharma nashte kulam krishnam abdharma adharma abhibhavati yuta. Krishna is telling Arjuna that when a dynasty, in this case think about Hinduism, when Hinduism and its sacred Vedic traditions are destroyed, people get caught up in that which is not good. We see this in everyday life, right? Someone stopped following our Vedic way, family values fall apart, family fall apart. When great traditions get destroyed, the remaining members of the family develop not good habits and they lose their chance for spiritual upliftment. We should not allow these Vedic values, as in a sense espoused in the 10 Vedic principles, we should not allow those to get lost. We should practice them every single day. My fellow souls, with utmost humility in my heart, what I'm about to tell you is not for the sake of being critical, but to hopefully make us think back to the challenging path of Swamiji and the role that each one of us play in this whole idea of making this universe noble. The Arya Samaj was founded on great principles, great Vedic values. It is an organization which in the most selfless of ways is for the benefit of God's entire creation. There's no one who those 10 principles will not make better if they follow them, regardless of caste and creed and religion. Those people, it is the responsibility to propagate those priceless values, and those people whose responsibility it is, us. We cannot fall prey to the weakness of man or society. This must not be. So today, I will ask each one of us, and I will tell you at those times, let's hit the reset button within ourselves, so that we focus what we need to do to bring ourselves back to that Vedic path that the great Maharishi laid out for us. As I speak of this great Rishi and we examine his values, I will ask all of us to examine ourselves and how we compare. If we do not do this, then we are Aryan in name only. So Swami Dayanand made logical, scientific, and critical analysis of all faiths, customs, traditions, practices, the rituals of Hinduism and other religions. He analyzed the practices and the rituals, and he rejected most of them as not based upon truth. In them, he saw corruption of true Vedic values and teachings. He saw them as a detriment to country and the world. And he was motivated to move the world, in his words, back to the Vedas. He believed that Hinduism had been corrupted by moving away from the founding principles of Vedas. He saw that Hindus have been misled by the priests of the time, those who felt that somehow they were of a higher class than everyone else. Most of us know that Swamiji condemned practices such as superstitions, ancestor worship, child marriage, idol worship. He saw no value in going to useless pilgrimages and retreats. He fought against the caste system and the base for the idea of untouchability. He spoke against wasteful offerings which are done today in temples of milk and yogurt and fruit and cooked foods, while others are suffering from lack of the same food. He discouraged what is a trend nowadays, where those who are in positions, executives and pandits, they practice what he called self-aggrandizement, boasting, glorification of self, and feeding the ego. As a lesson to all of us, we must ask ourselves, the pandits and the leaders of our Samaj must ask themselves, are we doing the work we are doing in the most selfless way possible, without focusing our name, fame, and glory? Swamiji fought against discrimination against our mothers and sisters, excluding women from reading the Vedas. We have come such a long way, but there's still reluctance in some sections of our society to include women in the decision-making process of mandirs. We still have this practice of ignorance where some people still insist that women do not participate in yajna at certain times of the month. He actively protested against the sacrifice of animals and the eating of meat by true Hindus. So we must ask ourselves, and I don't want to put anybody in the spot, so let's talk about our pundits and those of us who hold ourselves in high esteem. Are we living up to that great example of not eating God's children? Honestly, nobody should be sitting in this position that still does. Lead by example, that is the only way to lead. Swamiji believed in the simplicity of Havan and the chanting of mantra and creating vibrations with the rhythm and flow of mantras. Yet now we see external things added into yajnas and pujas, so it looks good for the camera and for Facebook. It's all about the show. He spoke about the pointless emphasis of empty rituals and about minimizing the motions of the body during Havan. Let us ask ourselves, are we keeping Havan in its simple, explainable, and minimum rituals as he taught? He taught about focusing on the mantra of Havan and the flow of the thought as a chanting progress. Are we doing things to break up that flow of thought? And today, in these times that we refer to as modern times, the very sanctity and value of our prayers are questionable. Again, because people want to make an impression. See, when the Maharishi designed these codes for us to live by, the 10 principles, he made it so the first 5 principles speak and teach us about truth, ultimate truth. The last 5 focuses on creating a society with noble virtues, civic code, co-living, how to live a disciplined life. We as Aryans must use these 10 principles also as a measurement of self. So we must ask ourselves, are we living by the 10 principles of our Samaj, or is it something we read, telling speeches? Swamiji was a leader who practiced what he preached. Are we practicing what we preach, or are we mouthing empty words of no value? He was such a selfless person. In his own life, he interpreted moksha to be a lower calling. He saw the higher calling as being one to help other people out of their mired existence, lives of bondage. This man was such a powerful figure. He had a strong stance against what he considered fanatic Hinduism. And because of this, he had many enemies. Once he was lecturing, and a man gave him a folded palm to eat, and the moment he put it in his mouth, he realized it was poisoned. His friend, a police officer, caught the would-be assassin, wanted to send him to prison. Swami says, no, leave him. I have come to free humanity, not to put them in prison. And here we are in a society that when someone disagrees with us or says something nasty about them, we hate them for the rest of our lives. He was forgiving. We must ask ourselves, are we forgiving? The Maharishi, this great man, I believe that God gave me these hands to put them together and pray with you. But He gave me the intellect and the strength to defend that which I hold dear. My mothers, my sisters, and our Vedic values and our families. Swamiji knew when to defend. He knew when to raise his hands and use his hands. He was brave. He was not cowed. He showed fearlessness and strength in the face of his enemies. One day when he was walking along the bank of the Ganges, two powerful men attacked him. He grabbed both of them and he jumped into the river and he hauled them under the water until they cried, and then he let them go. He was not afraid for confrontation like that to protect that which he held dear. But he knew how to show understanding and love. Do we show understanding and love based on those 10 principles of Dara Samaj? He was fearless, willing to defend himself and his values. Once he was delivering a speech and a group of children began to throw stones at him. The people called the children and asked them why you were doing that. It turned out that the people told the children to do that he's going to get them sweets. Swamiji lovingly got them together, took them, bought sweets for them, sat down with them. He treated all children as his own. We must ask ourselves, do we treat all of God's children as our own? Do we do that? Again, follow the living, breathing example that he set for all of us. When Karan Singh met Swamiji, he asked him whether he believed in the miraculous power of the river Ganges. Swamiji said, I accept Ganges as what it is. For me, the vessel in which I carry my water is the Ganges. Think about that. How profound a statement that is. Yet we still live in a society that believes that a dip in the Ganges is somehow purifying. So someone asked him about that so those who bathe in the Ganges won't have their sins washed away. And he replied, brother, one does not get his sins washed away by bathing in a river. Our sins and virtues are obtained by our own deeds. So we must ask ourselves, he was not a superstitious person. Are we still ruled by superstition? He was also a person that had a really good sense of humor. Once someone was fond of picking tulsi, and he saw this friend of his picking tulsi leaves, and he asked him, you have not given up your goat habit? They had a good laugh. People liked being around him. He was easy going, yet he was firm as far as his teachings go. Another time a Pandit came to have a religious discussion with Swamiji, and he insisted on sitting at a higher position because he believed he knew better than Swamiji, so he must sit higher. People went to him and told him, get down. Swamiji says, no, leave him alone. Just look at the crow sitting up on the top of the tree. That crow is more learned than the Pandit. See his sense of humor and his logic. Unfailing. Swamiji was not driven by his ego. He was driven by his desire to change the world through Vedic knowledge. But we've seen in other mandirs, I've seen situations where Pandit comes in late and he has to step over everybody else so that he could come and take the highest seat in the mandir. Like many other religions do, at that time too, Hindus had this habit of hiring somebody to pray for them. So this person sits in the corner of the room and he prays while everybody in the house keep doing what they're doing. Swamiji fought and taught against those kind of things. It did not make any sense. He said that practicing what we chant, practicing mantra is what made sense. And the last point I will make now is that how Swamiji rejected fame and name and glory. He refused the title of Guru which was offered to him, saying that his name, undignified with title, should be simply put down as an ordinary member of the Samaj. He considered himself a supporter like everyone else. What a lesson in humility. So we must ask ourselves, are we learning from this, and are we practicing being humble in our own lives? My fellow Aryans, those of us who identify ourselves as Aryan should only do so while we acknowledge the greatness of this Maharishi. We must also commit to following closely in his footsteps. We should not do what we do for the name and the fame and the glory. We can do and we can say the same things that we, done last year, but we must ask ourselves the question, have we changed? For some people that might be okay, but have we come a long way from who we were last year? If you are true Aryan, we should never be satisfied with status quo of being the same. Tomorrow we should be better than we are today. So we must look at this 200-year celebration of his life as a measurement, that we must ask ourselves these questions. Arya Samaj must ask ourselves these questions. As an organization, how much have we grown? Are we more united now than we were a year ago? Are we more focused in gaining more traction in spreading these teachings of Vedas than we were a year ago? I see the celebration of the life of the Maharishi as one to reflect upon ourselves. I see it as an opportunity to look at ourselves, to understand how we measure up against the 10 principles of Dar Samaj. I said this before, but we all know that you will not be able to drive a car just by reading the manual and knowing it word for word. You must get behind the wheel and must practice driving in reality. In the same way, my fellow souls, the 10 principles of Dar Samaj, you can read it over and over and over, but they are meant to be put into practice in every single thing we do and every single day of our lives. With no meanness, no negative thought in my mind, I ask each one of you to perform a self-analysis, to introspect, to determine how we can make our Samaj more impactful in this society of ours. And I pray that we understand the part that each one of us play in Krinbanto Vishwam Aryan. I pray that each one of us focus on making ourselves noble first. Pick on one thing that you know is not noble about you and focus on changing that one thing. So finally, on this note, this prayer for each one of you. May each one of you become a noble scholar. May each one of you become that person that help those around you to get up and to make their own lives better. Om Uta Deva Avahitam Deva Punayatah Puna Uta Agaha Chakrusham Deva Deva Jivayata Puna. My fellow souls, on Diwali night, the 30th of October 1883, as a group of Swamiji's disciples stood around his bed, he asked for all doors to be opened. He sat up and he chanted Vedic mantras. And after reciting Gayatri mantra, he opened his eyes. His face bore an expression of inner and outer peace. And this great man, this Maharishi said, "O God, who is compassionate, if this is your will, let it be. My life has been a wonderful play." And when he said this, he lay in his bed. His features were calm. A little while passed. He seemed as if he held his breath. And when he let it out, his soul went with it. Now, 200 years later, after his birth, we celebrate the greatness of this Maharishi, Swami Dayanand Saraswati. Thank you, O Swamiji. Thank you, O Maharishi. We pay homage to you, O Great One. We follow in your footsteps. Thank you for your immeasurable gift to mankind. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Om. With love and humility, thank you so much. Namaste.
धन्यवाद पंडित जी।